Very well. We now continue with public business, and the next item of public business is the Jersey Overseas Aid Commission reappointment of commissioners. Commissioner P4, I should say, lodged by the Minister for International Development. For the purposes of any debate, the respondent will be the chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I ask the greffier to read the citation.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to appoint Mr. Alistair Calvert as a non-States Commissioner of the Jersey Overseas Aid Commission, effective from 21st of March 2021 until 20th of March 2024, in accordance with the Jersey Overseas Aid Commission Jersey Law 2005.
Minister.
Thank you. I'd like to reappoint Alistair Calvert to my Gender Balanced Commission for a period of 3 years. He brings much private sector experience and expertise, especially in the world of impact investing, which the Commission are currently exploring as means of expanding the aid programme. Alistair also has his own interests in humanitarian aid, which gives Jersey Overseas Aid the benefit of his experience through his valuable contributions to our work. Sir, I make the proposition.
Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Any member wish to speak on the proposition? No member wishes to speak on the proposition? Then I close the debate and I ask the greffier to place a vote into the link. Told it's on its way. And the link is there, so I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 37 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstention in the link, and a further 2 votes pour in the chat. Very well. The next item of public business is improvements to road safety P5 lodged by the Conotab of St Martin. There are 2 amendments to this, one lodged by the Minister for Infrastructure and one lodged by Senator Ferguson. Conotab, are you accepting either or both of these amendments?
So I'm accepting the Minister for Infrastructures, but not Senator Ferguson's. Should I set out the reasons why, or should I do that later?
No, that's entirely a matter for you, and you're entitled to accept or not, as the case may be. So you presumably would like your proposition taken as amended by the amendment of the Minister for Infrastructure?
Yes, please, sir.
Are members content that it's taken as amended to that extent? If anyone indicates the contrary, would they please do so in the chat? Otherwise, we will read it as amended. No contrary indication. I therefore ask the greffier to read the proposition as amended by the amendment for the Minister for Infrastructure.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion. A, to request the Minister for Infrastructure to undertake a structural review of road safety in the island in order to identify ways of improving road safety with a focus on the needs of vulnerable road users, and to publish its initial findings with strategic policy recommendations by the end of 2021. And B, to request the Minister for Infrastructure to review existing legislation and the island's highway code to identify the benefits of introducing a hierarchy of responsibility for road users based on the level of risk presented to road users in the event of a collision.
Konatar.
Thank you, sir. The aim of this proposition is to provide constructive, proactive and lasting improvements to road safety in Jersey. The catalyst for bringing forward this proposition was one case you are likely all familiar with, where the family of one of my parishioners felt, and still feel, miserably failed by the system. On the 26th of March 2020, almost 1 year ago, 14-year-old cyclist Freddie Denkovic was hit by a van while cycling in St Martin. He had stopped at the yellow line and was inching out to check for traffic when he was struck. Freddie ended up with 2 fractures to his arm, stitches around his eye, an operation on his knee and 2 missing teeth. It took almost 7 months before he could complete a full day of school due to the concussion he had sustained. Witnesses of the accident reported that over 20 minutes after the accident had occurred, the driver of the vehicle in question returned to the scene but did not make themselves known or offer assistance. The driver did not stop after the accident, and neither did the driver or the driver's partner dial 999. No one was prosecuted, which in the circumstances, in my opinion, beggars belief. The family have been unable to press charges, with the Law Officers Department concluding that there was insufficient evidence to secure a realistic chance of a successful prosecution. A petition was subsequently launched by Freddie's mother, Joanna Denkovic, calling on a review of the laws governing the rights and protections of all vulnerable road users, with a view to making it safer to cycle, walk and horse ride on Jersey's roads. As of today, this petition has so far amassed over 3,700 signatures and has attracted significant coverage from all media outlets in Jersey. As St Martin's Constable, I have a duty to represent my parishioners, and as a States member, I have a duty to all islanders, not just those who live in the parish. I therefore believe that it is vital that we do what we can to ensure that an incident like this does not happen again. This proposition attempts to further the cause taken up by the Denkovic family to improve road safety and accelerate efforts to develop a culture of safe and effective road use across the island. Between the 28th of July to the 27th of October 2020, the United Kingdom's Department for Transport undertook a public consultation that proposed changes to its highway code to improve safety for vulnerable road users, with a particular focus on the following groups: cyclists, pedestrians and horse riders. At the top of the department's proposals was to introduce a hierarchy of road users that would ensure that those road users who can do the greatest harm have the greatest responsibility to reduce the danger or threat they may pose to others. The outcome of the consultation is currently awaiting publication. This proposed hierarchy would place those road users most at risk in the event of a collision at the very top. The consultation identified children, older adults, and disabled people as the most at risk, followed by cyclists, horse riders, and motorcyclists. In short, those driving the largest vehicle, which would carry the potential to cause the most harm in a collision, would therefore carry the greatest responsibility to take care and reduce the damage they could inflict on others. A lorry driver would have greater responsibility than someone in a car, as would a cyclist over a pedestrian. The hierarchy is about accepting that, although everyone suffers during a road collision, those in charge of vehicles that can cause the greatest harm in a collision bear the greatest responsibility to take care and reduce the damage they pose to others. This is not about a presumption of guilt. All will remain innocent until proven guilty. Instead, it is simply reinforcing the need to be aware of the risks your use of the road implicitly carries and how they could affect others if something goes wrong. A hierarchy of responsibility recognises that, to truly make our roads safer, we need to change how we think about the road users around us. I'm aware that there'll be resistance, by some to the hierarchy liability initiative. And to those who are resistant, I would also ask why, if it is so dreadful, do the vast majority of European jurisdictions have it and think it completely normal? Having held some very constructive and informative meetings with the Minister of Infrastructure and his officers, I'm happy to accept the Minister for Infrastructure's amendments. The launch of a structural review of road safety is an absolute necessity, and it is something which the Minister and his department are willing and eager to undertake. The review will hopefully identify the unique issues facing the island and provide solutions tailored to fit the need. We all know that there is a continuing need to encourage islanders to adopt more sustainable forms of transport. So it is vital that Jersey is able to provide the necessary protections to keep them safe. And a thorough open review with active public engagement and well-researched findings and recommendations will make significant strides in helping us become a safer, greener and healthier society. Having spoken to officers within infrastructure, housing and environment, I can safely say that I agree that this amended approach to the proposed hierarchy will yield the best results. This is a holistic approach that will benefit us all. From meetings with the officers in infrastructure, I have found them to be hugely knowledgeable of this area, and the expertise and enthusiasm for road safety of individuals tells me that there is a real drive and incentive to deliver on this initiative. And I'm immensely grateful for the time they've taken to discuss this proposition and find the best way to make it work. Finally, I must thank Joanna and Paul Denkovich for the consultation I've had with them. Joanna has proven herself to be a principled and resilient campaigner on this issue, and I hope that we as an Assembly can deliver on what she has started. As I said at the beginning of my speech, the aim of this proposition is to provide constructive, proactive and lasting improvements to road safety in Jersey. With the support of this Assembly, we can begin to make true, genuine, lasting improvements that will keep islanders safe on the road, regardless of their method of transportation. I urge you, for the sake and safety of us all, for all islanders who use our roads, please vote for this proposition. Thank you.
Very much. Clontarf, was the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Very well. There is now an amendment lodged by Senator Ferguson, and I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 2, paragraph B. Before paragraph B, insert the following new paragraph and redesignate the subsequent paragraphs accordingly. B. To request the Minister for Infrastructure to study the direct vision standard introduced in London in October 2019 and to introduce a similar standard in Jersey in order that pedestrians, cyclists and motorbikes are made more visible to the drivers of heavy goods vehicles and other commercial vehicles.
Senator.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I mean, I thought that this was just a simple amendment that I was bringing to a straightforward proposition. Until the initial reaction of the ministers, not worth it, too expensive. Really, Minister, what price a human life? My report makes mention of the volume of building traffic lumbering up and down Montsoyer. The view from the cab does appear to be extremely limited. Is this why it's necessary to have what they call a banksman on building sites? The Minister will also make much of the fact that the vehicle involved with Freddie was a people carrier. If the visibility from any vehicle is so poor that it is essential, then it's essential that this aspect of a vehicle should form part of the overall review. The direct vision standard set up by London minimises HGV blind spots. I bring this proposition to ensure that the Infrastructure Department looks at the extensive research already undertaken. There is no point in reinventing the wheel. If they've done the research, then let's have a look at it. I'm sure there are those of us in the Assembly who have in the past added extra mirrors to their vehicles to improve visibility. Indeed, I'm of a vintage who remembers additional wing mirrors being added to cars as an additional safety feature, you know, back in the dawn of time. Time has moved on, and we are entering the next stage, cameras. Cameras provide a defense for drivers especially. You know, the thrust of the overall arguments in the main proposition tend to put primary blame on the larger vehicle. This isn't always the case, and cameras provide evidence to actually defend the driver, or at least make the case clear. You know, you can't just say, oh, he's a big lorry, so it's his fault. I've known cases where, you know, cyclists and motorbikes and so on scurry through the traffic and cause an accident. So, you know, it isn't just one hierarchy. It can happen, you know, all the way through. It should also be noted that HGVs today are better insulated, and the sound of a collision is not always heard in the cab. There is also the interesting point that the trend today is to use more cameras. I understand that the new Mercedes range will be fitted with cameras rather than with mirrors. Before you listen to the siren call of the minister with his too expensive, not necessary cry, please remember, what price a human life? Please support my amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator. Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Deputy Lewis.
Thank you, sir. If I could start with a few corrections, sir. I did not say to the senator that it's too expensive, and I did not say to the senator it was not worth it. In fact, I thank the senator for bringing it. My department are well aware of this program, which is only taking place in central London itself. I'm all for, it's called actually a direct vision standard. I'm all for safety on the roads. I'm all for extra cameras on vehicles. In fact, most refuse trucks have them now, and all the Jersey buses have them too. Many private individual cars have these cameras as recording devices and covers everything. I mean, sir, I'd like to thank Senator Ferguson for her amendment. I support her view that improving vision for HGV drivers would contribute to improved road safety. Direct vision standards would be considered as part of the review, which I have informed the senator I would add to the review. And it would significantly improve road safety when compared with other safety countermeasures, and could be incorporated into the existing delivery program of safety initiatives. So I believe the catalyst for this proposition was an accident which left a young boy seriously injured. And I'll leave it there. So I'll be speaking on the main proposition, but my team are very experienced. They're in contact with Transport for London and the transport authorities in the UK, and they're very well aware of all the upcoming developments there. I would recommend to members that they do not accept the Second Amendment. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. I think the minister protests too much. Basically, what Senator Ferguson is putting forward is a proposition that will not diminish or weaken in any way Constable Stone's proposition. What she is actually putting forward is something that anyone who is genuinely concerned with road safety should support. We all know large vehicles do have blind spots, same as cars have blind spots. And anything we can do to enhance the safety of pedestrians, whether it be people pushing prams on the sidewalk, and we know that these vehicles are very wide and very often have their mirrors extending over the sidewalk. They may not be able to see cyclists coming up behind or motorcyclists, and we all know how they come and they park themselves in your blind spot. Also, we've had people with skateboards hanging behind a car or a vehicle and getting a tow from it. You know, these things are accidents that are likely, or accidents likely to happen. And I think anything we can do to improve road safety, and especially with the large number of commercial vehicles that we have on the roads. I'm appalled living on the inner road in St Albans Inner Road in St Helier, how many large vehicles, building vehicles, some of them, yeah, I forget what the actual range is, a P20, are using the inner road when they should really be using the avenue. So I'm very much in favour of anything that is going to support road safety, and I would ask members to support Deputy Ferguson, and don't listen to the minister, who basically is almost as if I can't be bothered, I didn't think of it. Thank you, sir.
Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. Like the Minister for Infrastructure, I congratulate the Senator on bringing this amendment to a certain extent, but I do question whether it's appropriate. The proposition as amended requests the Minister to undertake a structural review of road safety in the island. He's already confirmed that what the Senator is suggesting will come under that brief, and I therefore think it inappropriate for any particular provisions to be added to the main proposition, simply because these will in any event be carried out in the course of review. So I will not be supporting the amendment, and as I say so, I think that given the breadth of the review, I think any specific items are superfluous to what is required. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy Gardner.
It's going quick. Thank you, sir. I'm congratulating to Senator Ferguson to bringing this amendment. And I do recognize, and I work a lot with highly experienced team on the high roads, on our roads, and they're doing a great job, and I'm sure that they're aware about all measures that took place in London. Saying this, I'm so tired on review. Yesterday I heard about 2 reviews on Rouge-Bouillon's code that never ending. This is very simple, straightforward measure to enhance safety on the road. It has been researched by London Infrastructure. I live in town, Queen's Road, Rouge-Bouillon, you name it, highly populated areas with pedestrians, motorbikes, cyclists. It will not cost much to introduce this measure, and it will protect as drivers as road users. Any review of making our roads safer will not clash, or any summary or recommendations from the review will not clash with what Senator Ferguson is proposing. So I would be personally supporting this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Colin St John.
Thank you, sir. I congratulate Senator Ferguson on bringing this. I think it adds to the mix, and it should be part of what they examine. But as the Deputy of St Mary's pointed out, it is already in the mix, so whether one needs a separate proposition for it or amendment for it, I bow to other people's knowledge. My concern is the number of P30s on the island. We're seeing a steady increase and increase and increase. And I would like to see a greater control on the number of these large lorries. And also, because they are heavy and heavier, they obviously damage the roads more. And I think the Minister should be looking at some form of fee for a P30 licence I know it doesn't quite enter into this debate, but I just feel it's something that should be pointed out at this stage. I will be supporting this amendment simply because it needs to be in part of the mix, and we need to, I think, look at the size of vehicles on the island because they are damaging some of our smaller roads. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Connie Tarr. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? No other member wishes to speak on the amendment? Then I close the debate and call upon Senator Ferguson to respond.
Thank you, sir. Well, the minister must have been at a different briefing to me, but never mind, because I'm absolutely certain. I'm Scottish. If people mention money, I notice it. I want really that the minister confirms in the States that this will form part of the review. You know, otherwise we find that things get kicked into the long grass and somebody's forgotten them. So we need to just make sure that it's there so that in, you know, a year's time or 6 months' time, I can, when we're discussing road safety, I can actually say, and where is the part of the review which refers to the road safety and cameras on large vehicles and any other vehicles that need something done about the being able to see and so on. So, as I say, it's a minor thing, yes. I am of the opinion that the blame is never all. It's easy to say the bigger vehicles should take all the blame. Yes, possibly most of the time it will, but not always. Not if, you know, there's a scooter, not a scooter, a Vespa type vehicle, which just sort of cuts down the middle of the filter in turn, and it's very difficult to see them. So, you know, let us make sure that blame is apportioned correctly and not, you know, just, oh, well, you're bigger than I am, so it's your fault. Please support my amendment.
Very much, Senator. I will ask the referee to place a vote into the link. Vote is on Senator Ferguson's amendment. I open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Ask the referee to close the voting. The amendment has been defeated. 18 votes pour, 24 votes contre in the link, and 1 vote pour and 2 votes contre in the chat.
Can we have the votes either way, please, sir?
Yes, votes either way.
Those voting for: Senator Moore, Deputy Higgins, Deputy Lehegara, Deputy Doublé, Deputy Ash, the Deputy of Greville, the Deputy of St Peter, Deputy Gardner, Deputy Young, the Deputy of St Martin, the Connétable of St Brelard, the Deputy of Senator Pallett, the Conotab of St John, Deputy Truscott, Senator Ferguson, the Conotab of St Lawrence, the Deputy of St John, Deputy Masson, and also the Conotab of St Saviour in the chat. And then voting conch in the chat, the Deputy of St Mary and Deputy Tadier. And then in the link, Deputy Ward, Senator Gorst, Deputy Ayer, Deputy Wickenden, Senator Mezek, the Conotab of St Helier, Deputy Lewis, Deputy Pinnell, the Deputy of St Juan, Deputy Morel, Deputy Martin, Deputy Trinity, Deputy Alves, Senator Valois, the Conotab of St Mary and Trinity and St Peter, Deputy Pamplin, Deputy Guida, the Conotab of St Juan, Deputy Tadier again, Deputy Southern, Deputy Labby and the Conotab of St Martin.
Well, we now return to the main proposition as amended. And does any member wish to speak on the proposition? No member wishes to speak. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, my reception seems to be very slow, so I'll just use the microphone. All I wanted to say was that it is absolutely support this, but I have to say that anything that says that the Minister for Infrastructure, and this is not a personal thing, that the position of Minister for Infrastructure is to undertake a review, really does need to be chased in terms of the outcome. I'm pleased to see that recommendations will be made by 2021. The second part says to review existing legislation and identify the benefits of introducing. I would just say to the proposer that this is a good idea, and let's just make sure and get some total reassurances from the department that some action will be taken, because unfortunately in this assembly too frequently we have had things passed in this assembly and actually no action is taken, and we spend our time chasing and chasing and chasing. It would be nice to see the government do something different to that for a change and get its house in order. Thank you, sir.
Deputy. Deputy St Mary, you have a question for the Solicitor General.
Yes, thank you, sir. My understanding is that failure to observe a provision of the Highway Code does not of itself render a person liable to criminal proceedings, but that under the road traffic legislation, any such failure may be relied upon as tending to establish or negative any liability to those proceedings. I would be grateful if the Solicitor General could set out mechanics of bringing a prosecution in the event of a breach of the Highway Code, whether he believes that any revision of the Highway Code will entail an amendment of the primary law, and further whether any revision would mean that new protocols to assist the police officers in following the new Highway Code will be put in place. Thank you, sir.
Were those clear for you, Mr. Solicitor, and do you need time to think about them?
I think they're clear. I can answer them, I hope, now. The Highway Code, the Deputy is quite right, is not law. It's a set of guidelines issued by the Minister explaining to people how they ought to negotiate our roads. Failure to observe elements of the Highway Code may be used in evidence in a criminal prosecution to try to demonstrate that particular driving fell below a standard such that it amounts to an offence, for example, an offence of careless driving or an offence of dangerous driving. But its role is purely evidential. In terms of revising the highway code, forgive me, I'm getting a lot of interference. In terms of revising the highway code to give effect to, for example, a hierarchy of vulnerability, I don't know if that's really what the deputy was driving at. Well, yes, it would be possible to make changes, or for the minister to make changes to the code, but because it's guidance for how people should behave, any hierarchy would have to give road users guidance on what a hierarchy meant in practice. For example, it might mean that someone in a larger vehicle should have to give way to someone in a smaller vehicle, or a motorist should have to give way to a cyclist and a cyclist to a pedestrian. You would need that sort of guidance so that motorists would know what was expected of them. If you thereafter wanted to incorporate into our law this notion of presumed liability, which is part of the civil law in some jurisdictions, you are really saying, when you talk of presumed liability, that it is assumed that the driver, the less vulnerable road user, is liable for injury to the more vulnerable road user. So, for example, the car driver is presumed to be liable for the accident in which the pedestrian was injured. Now, to introduce that into law would require, or would involve, changing the existing law on where the burden of proof lies in a civil case, because the legal burden of proving that you have been injured because of the fault of someone else rests on the victim. So if you wanted to introduce presumed liability, you would have to legislate to change that legal burden of proof to place it instead on the less vulnerable road user, to establish that in fact he was not to blame, despite the assumption that he is. In terms of guidance for the police, I can't really see that would be necessary. Our police are well experienced in dealing with road traffic matters. If there are changes to the highway code which suggest new things may give rise to criminal liability, well, the police, I'm sure, will be able to familiarise themselves with those things and have regard to them when they police and when they gather evidence. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, sir. Could I have a supplementary, please, sir?
Yes, of course.
Well, I thank the Solicitor General for that clarification. That is most helpful. A relatively minor point. My question was directed in relation to criminal proceedings, but could he also confirm that under the present law, the same assumptions as to whether compliance with highway code or not is rendered valid in civil proceedings? Thank you.
So do you mean civil or criminal proceedings?
Yes, sorry, my only interpretation is that the road traffic legislation does apply to civil proceedings as well. Could the Solicitor General confirm that?
Yes, I will. The road traffic law creates criminal offences only. It is the case, however, that anyone who commits a criminal motoring or road traffic offence, that conviction would almost certainly found an action in civil law for negligence. So if you were mown down by a motorist who had driven carelessly and that person was prosecuted and convicted for careless driving, that conviction would be evidence to support a civil claim for damages for any injury sustained. The highway code is relevant evidentially to both establishing the criminal offences under the road traffic law, and its rules are also relevant for establishing civil liability in a claim for damages.
Well, again, I thank the Solicitor General for that further clarification. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. And in fact, I'm pleased to follow the Solicitor General. One of the disturbing elements of the accident which brought about this proposition to the states was that it was another example of the failure to police to investigate properly. Now, the Solicitor General has just told us they know what they're doing and they do it well and take everything into account. But they didn't, for example, in this case, advertise the witnesses. which was normal when you haven't got witnesses who saw the actual accident. They didn't, for example, when the driver did come forward, who didn't report the accident, breathalyze them. They didn't check the vehicle data recorder for information. And then, in fact, it did turn out that there was a witness, but they failed to interview the key witness. Now, it's all very good as having basically road safety regulations, the highway code and everything else. But if people are injured or knocked down in an accident, they should be properly investigated. And this is not the first time. Unfortunately, I was seen to be a critic of the police, but mainly because I'm getting a list of cases where they haven't properly investigated matters. Now, so far as this particular proposition is concerned, yes, I fully support it. But we need to have a look at the policing of these accidents and make sure the police, well, I'm sure they should have a checklist, in which case they should follow it. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. The Connie Townsend one.
Thank you, sir. And I think I'm pleased to follow the Deputy Higgins, not least because he's effectively stolen some of my lines. But I would just like to emphasise what he said. I think the elephant in the room with this proposition, which in my view is a good proposition, is what happened in relation to any proceedings that should have taken place as a result of this incident. And I hope, because I'm sure the AG and the SG are listening, that they take these comments on board and do review this case again with the Chief of Police and look to see where things did go wrong and why a proposition was not brought in this case, where, as an ex-engineer, it seems to me to be an abundance of evidence to do that. And somehow or other, it never made it to the courts. And that seems to me to be a failing of our system. And I can understand why the parents will be very upset at that, and why I think rightly or wrongly they're pushing for this legislation. But there are existing procedures and processes which should have captured the person that committed this offence and should have brought them to court and brought them to justice, and then would have given the claimant an avenue for civil damages. So I would strongly urge the AG and the SG to look at this again with the Chief of Police and learn from what's happened and make sure that, for goodness sake, let it not happen again, please. Just to tell you, the second point I want to make is in relation to Senator Ferguson's proposition, which, as a cyclist and a road user myself, was very sensible. And I have to say to the Senator, the only reason I didn't vote for it was because the Minister made it very clear that he was going to include a review of the aspects of the Senator's proposition in his proposition. And please, can I make a plea to Deputy Lewis, please do this. I think the Senator's proposition made a lot of sense, and it was only that the proposition had absolutes in it that I found myself not able to vote for it. But I think we should take on board the fact that the Senator has done a lot of research, and I would urge the Deputy to take it seriously and take it on board. I'm sure he will do, knowing him. And finally, can I just congratulate the Councillor St Martins in bringing this proposition and working with Deputy Lewis. In my mind, it makes a lot of sense. Road safety, certainly as a constable of a parish, is a big issue these days. There are more and more people using the roads, and incidents such as the one we've seen will continue to occur. And I think having a structure in place that deals with it makes a lot of sense. The only thing I would say is in terms of criminal proceedings, we must not stray into the area where somebody is presumed guilty before they've even had a chance to prove their innocence. And if that appeared in regulations, I would not be able to support it. But if we avoid that trap, then I feel certain that I can support this proposition or the regulations when they come back. So I would urge members to vote for this. It's a good piece of work and something that we definitely need to do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Conatub. Deputy Taddy.
Thank you, sir. I think that the previous speaker hit the nail on the head, and what he was saying, perhaps in diplomatic language, was that the Attorney General's office has got this one wrong. And I've got lots of sympathy for the family of Freddie Denskovich, if I'm pronouncing it right, sir. I've got a lot of sympathy for their situation, first of all, because it's a terrible thing to happen to a young person, and I hope he's recovering well. And the point is that there's a lot of indignation around this, which I can also understand. And as is sometimes the case with petitions, is that they've quite correctly identified a problem, and I think the solution which is being sought is perhaps the wrong one. in the case of the petition, because what clearly seems to me that should have happened is that and perhaps it's ironic, but the fact that this driver didn't stop is what, in my mind, and I presume in the mind of the constable, the former chef de police of St. Juan, so he has some knowledge of these kind of things, presumably, is that the driver failing to stop is what made him culpable of a criminal act. And I say that on the basis that I presume it's a criminal matter not to stop at the scene of an accident if you've had an accident. Now, of course, the defence would be that he didn't know that he had hit the cyclist. And if that's genuinely the case, then it seems that another offence would have occurred, the offence of driving without due care and attention, or even reckless driving, because I don't know how you can drive in such a way as to hit a cyclist who's coming out or pulled out of on a yellow line, who's edging out on a yellow line, we're told in the report, and that you can be hit with such force as to have those multiple injuries without knowing that you've hit something, or and especially given the fact we're told that the driver then went back to the scene of the crime, if it is a crime indeed, 20 minutes later. It seems that there is sufficient evidence there to say that an offence has been committed, but it doesn't mean, of course, that the driver was in the wrong for the collision, and I think that's the whole point. And as I said, if the driver had stopped, then which I think anyone would do anyway, anyone in their right mind with a good conscience who had hit somebody else would stop and say, "Are you okay?" without meaning they needed to take responsibility or take being in the wrong, so to speak. I think that matter would have been resolved. There was a lack of humanity, clearly, in this case, in my mind. I'm just speaking as I find it. So we've got this situation where there's been a big clamour to sign a petition for a change in the law, which probably doesn't need to occur anyway, because, as we've said, that there has to be that evidential test. For example, I can be one moment a car driver, the next moment I can be a cyclist, and later on today I might be a pedestrian. And it is true, and it's already the case, that there is a hierarchy of responsibility. If you're cycling, it's normal that you should look out for pedestrians. If you're in a car, when you're overtaking a cyclist or pedestrian, you're supposed to give a very wide berth and overtake where possible over the white line down the middle of the road to give that cyclist as much space as you would another car. But unfortunately, this kind of thing doesn't happen in Jersey, and we see it time and time again, where there seems to be a penchant and an acceptability in some quarters, and I see it on social media. People like to have a go at cyclists, saying, "Oh, look at this group of selfish cyclists taking up the road." Well, of course they're taking up the road. That's what they do. That's no different to cars, who often crawl along at 5 or 10 miles an hour in rush hours. And you see these cars often overtaking on bends where there isn't space to overtake a cyclist or a pedestrian safely. And you're thinking, what's the point in that? I mean, it's not going to get you to your destination any quicker anyway, because you're probably going to be caught up by the cyclist when you get to the next red light. But you are seriously endangering other road users, yourself included, but primarily those in a more vulnerable position and the oncoming traffic. And I've seen so many near misses on our roads, and it's not helped by the fact that, of course, in many places in Jersey, and I need to flag this up formally with the Constable of St Clement's, on the inner road between Grouville and St Clement, there's parking that is legally permitted on the road, which is very dangerous, and that's the same as you go up Grouville towards Ransoms. It's the same on the inner road as you go from St Helier to St Albans, and there are examples of that right through the island, and it's because we give priority to cars. We say, you know, there's a presumption that you should be allowed to park your cars on main roads, even where it incurs a visual liability for drivers, which ultimately makes our roads less safe. So I think that, of course, you know, the principle of the hierarchy of vulnerability is correct. It shouldn't override the evidential test when it comes to these matters. But I think in this case, I think there's been a catastrophic failure, as far as I can see it, in not pursuing the correct offence. We're told that there was insufficient evidence, but insufficient evidence of what? I would say that there might have been insufficient evidence to suggest that the driver was in the wrong. He may well not have been in the wrong, but there is certainly evidence to suggest that any driver who has got eyes and got ears and knows their vehicle, as I've said at the beginning, sir, should know when they've had a thud and hit something or someone, and in that case they should stop, at least to make sure their vehicle's okay, if not to have the conscience to make sure that that the person that they potentially hit has been injured, sir. So I leave it there. I think there are answers to be given, and of course, although I'm not asking any direct questions to the Solicitor General, he's at liberty to speak on this matter if he wants to further.
Well, of course, it wouldn't be appropriate for the Solicitor General to give information as to any individual prosecution decision. That is all I would say about that. Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Young.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful to the CONITAB for bringing forward this proposition to enable us to have a debate. And obviously the debate is focused very much on the hierarchy of responsibility. But I think what we've ended up with the amended proposition, sir, there is both emphasis on vulnerable, improving road safety, with a focus on vulnerable road users, and as well as the issue about hierarchy of responsibility. And so I think it's important. What I'd ask the infrastructure minister to, when he does the work as a result of this proposition, because I'm sure it will be approved, that he takes the opportunity to engage also with, I believe, the legislative part of the states, particularly Home Affairs and parishes, because I think the speeches of members so far illustrate that in order to achieve better road safety, we need to have joined up policy between both the infrastructure minister and the work that he does in providing or trying to manage the infrastructure we've got, the roads and the fabric of so on, that physical fabric, and also the regulation part of vehicles, which he has, but also how people go about using their vehicles. And I think, you know, the issues raised about negligence and this particular case, which frankly, I'd be frank, I don't know much about, but I know. I think what I want to see is that review go a little bit further. It hasn't got a time limit on it because the original proposition did, but of course it's now gone. And so I'd like the infrastructure minister to please to take that on board, because what we've seen, I think we've got, you know, fixed space in the island. We can't expand our roads. Vehicles are getting bigger. They're getting very faster. We're seeing a lot, you know, the congestion that causes that impatient and manners, and even the odd bit of road rage. And I don't think you can detach the issue of road safety at all from people's behaviours. And so I've always banged on about how we still do not have any disciplines in the system, for example, having a point scheme on licensing, so that if people persistently did things and got caught out, then they would eventually lose the right to drive. So I think that's important, and I accept that even as a motorcyclist, and one of those motorcyclists that Senator Ferguson referred to in what she had to say about people drilling down in the lanes. But I do that knowingly, and knowing that as a motorcyclist that you have to take responsibility for your own actions. Defensive riding, they call it. And I think that's an important principle. But nonetheless, so and also I believe, please CONITABs, think about fixed penalties too. So I'd like to see those things done, as well as the opportunities for infrastructure changes where it's possible. Schemes like the Westmount, the marking the carriageway to give pedestrians priority, for example. Lots of opportunities for where we've got dangerous roads for that to be done. But I think I go with this. It's not an ideal proposition. In some ways, I preferred the original version before the Infrastructure Minister's amendment, but I wasn't going to make a big issue of that. But nonetheless, I hope very much that the Infrastructure Minister will take those comments on board in the work he's got to do. I accept his resources are pretty stretched. And with the sustainable transport strategy at the moment, he's got a lot on his plate. But nonetheless, I think this is really important quality of life issue. Road safety really matters. And I think that's the lesson we should put today. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy Greville.
Thank you, sir. I, like many other members in this assembly, are absolutely appalled by the account that the Constable of St Martin gave about the injuries sustained by this child. As a parent, I find this absolutely abhorrent. Especially so, what has been described to us as States members, in that no prosecution has taken place, and the driver is known to the police. I cannot fathom it. I hear what the bailiff has said, that the Solicitor General can't make any comment about any particular case, but what has been described to me is nothing less than a hit and run. Now, I don't know, the Solicitor General spoke at length about different highway laws and all this sort of thing, but we don't really care which one it falls in. I think States members and members of the public just want to see justice done, whether it's careless driving, hit and run, whatever it is. I think this case certainly needs reopening. About the same time as this incident came about, I heard of another incident in St Martin parish, where a car came off the yellow line, went into a cyclist, and that car driver had the book thrown at them. It's very, very unsatisfactory. So I would really like to see this case, well, opened. I don't know about reopened, certainly opened and reconsidered. But also, I'd like the Infrastructure Minister, along with the constables, and I know Deputy Ward's proposition, I'm not sure if he's doing any work towards this, but as the constable knows, there was a group of us with Cyclists for Jersey that were very keen to see some dedicated lanes for cyclists and pedestrians, a network of them throughout the parishes. And I know the Minister is going to stand up and say, oh yes, but I haven't got the resources. But I need to remind him that in the Environment Fund, there is 5 million. So even if there might be some resources that need looking at to dedicate these lanes as cyclists and pedestrian priority, a network of them, so that there is a safe network around the island and into St Helier. This is so long overdue. I appreciate that we can't have a dedicated cycle track everywhere, but I really think the constables need to start looking at their parishes. I've handed them each a map. It was this time last year, in actual fact, each a map where they could each plot some safe roads where cyclists and pedestrians take priority. But I don't see why that should take so much time, so much resources. But anyway, we keep waiting, don't we? But in the interim, I'd really like to see, or I'd like to hear if the Solicitor General can give us some comfort and give the mother and child some comfort over the injuries this child endured, and nobody is being prosecuted. That cannot be right. Thank you, sir.
You're asked to give way for a point of clarification from Deputy Ward. Deputy Greville, do you agree to do so?
Well, I've finished, but if he wants to ask me something,
A point of clarification, Deputy Ward?
Yes, so I was just a comment, guys. I don't know what work I've been doing. Was the deputy aware of written question 48 where that question has been asked? Because I did ask that question as to what work has gone on.
I'm sorry. I don't think that's a point of clarification. I think that's information for the Assembly, Deputy. Thank you very much indeed. Could I just mention to members, because the issue has come up on more than one occasion during the course of this debate, in which criticism has apparently been made or concern expressed about what has happened in a particular case, which has been the case that has founded this proposition. There are well-travelled reasons for why law officers are not and should not, other than in the most exceptional circumstances, make any comment in the Assembly in connection with any specific case. It is seldom the case that members of the Assembly will have the full information before them that are before the law officers when they make decisions, and it is equally the case that that full information can often not be put before the Assembly for a number of very proper reasons. To debate whether or not an individual should be prosecuted, and I appreciate that the individual has not been named, runs the risk of a trial in a public forum such as the State's Assembly. And that is not what the Assembly can or should be doing, if I may respectfully remind members of that. And that is why the Solicitor General will not be in a position to speak about a specific case. The law officers have heard what the Assembly has said, and the law officers are more than capable of taking what they think is appropriate into account. But one thing that is not a ground for prosecution and can never be is the opinion of the State's Assembly. Very well, I hope that's of some assistance. You have a point of order, Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Can you clarify, sir, that it is, of course, open for the Attorney General to speak at any time, even when not answering a question, and that he can talk in terms of generality, sir, in terms of precedence?
That's entirely correct. It is also the case that law officers can respond to a request for advice, can offer advice, and in theory can speak on any subject. But of course, by convention, they refrain from doing so unless it is specifically about a legal matter. If that assists you, Deputy. Very well. Does any other member wish to speak on? Yes, Connie Tarver, St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. Just wanted to support the Constable of St Martin and recognise that what she has done in bringing this proposition forward is absolutely, I think, her responsibility as Constable of St Martin, and I'm sure had this accident happened in any other parish and the constable would have become aware of it, it's highly likely that any one of the other 11 of us would have done the same, sir. But we've heard that there's been collaborative working between the constable and the Minister for Infrastructure, and that is obviously to be commended. I wanted to just speak to that, sir, and refer to what the Deputy of Greville mentioned a moment ago when she was speaking about the constables needing to or should be bringing forward cycle lanes within their parishes, and she's absolutely right that she did come to speak to the committee some 12 months or so ago, when she did, as she has told us, very kindly give each roads committee a copy of a map of the island and for them to look at the byroads within their parishes and to identify where they thought it would be practical to introduce cycle lanes to prioritise cyclists and give them safe cycling areas. What the Deputy may have forgotten is that actually we were very supportive of her proposition, or that she put to us, sir, and but we agreed that it needed to be worked upon within the remit of the Infrastructure Minister's road safety strategy. And I'd just like to speak to that very briefly, sir, to advise members that I'm very pleased that the Minister has now been able to agree to meet with us later this month, at which time we will be discussing a number of road safety matters, such as the cycle strategy within the road safety strategy, as well as Deputy Ward's proposition that was agreed last year, when we would look at designated roads that would be recognised to promote cyclists, horse riders and pedestrians, sir. So just wanted the Assembly to know that things are progressing, maybe a little bit more slowly than the constables would have wished, but certainly we will be progressing them in a couple of weeks when we meet with the Infrastructure Minister. And just finally, sir, to say that obviously I will be supporting the Constable's proposition as amended by the Minister. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Constable St Brelard.
Thank you, sir. And as previous speakers, I commend the Constable St Martin for bringing this, and I'm a bit saddened by the reason for having to do this. But notwithstanding that, I would just like to speak to paragraph A of the Minister's amendment, which is going to, or the amended version, which requests the Minister for Infrastructure to look at road safety in the island. Now, I would just like to make the point, sir, that if the present situation is that if there is a road safety issue, it seems to get referred to a road safety panel. I don't know who they are, sir, but I'm sure they're all very eminent. But the result is always, no, we can't do it. And it certainly seems to have been to date, as is often alluded to by the Constable St Helier, dare I say it, a can't do department. Can we be, sir, can the Minister be more innovative in providing improved road safety? Can we nibble away at our very narrow roads and try and achieve some improvement? It may not be, sir, the improvement the Minister may wish in the light of UK legislation and design, but it may be adapted to our Jersey needs. We may not be able to achieve 3 metre wide cycle paths, but surely if we can achieve footpaths, that has to be better than nothing. And there are several cases where we could do that, sir, and I would far rather see that than nothing at all. So I just ask the Minister to widen his eyes into what we can achieve, and let's try and make his department a can-do department. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Constable. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member? Deputy Ash.
Thank you, sir. And I'll keep this fairly brief, as I will be supporting this, and I think it's a laudable thing to bring. I would like to mention a couple of things. Deputy Tadier raised the point that cyclists taking up the road is no different to cars. To an extent, he has a point, sir, but I may have led a sheltered existence, but I've yet to see 2 cars driving along side by side, having a pleasant chat for 2 miles about their impending skiing holiday. Maybe they do, but I've yet to witness it. I would also like to bring up a point made by the Deputy of Grouville, as we established she shall be known this morning, where she's called for dedicated cycle paths, and I fully support that. But I would like to go on record as saying I will not be supporting any cycle path that goes through FB Fields, particularly at the detriment of the cricket that is played there. So it's just to go on record. I'm always wary, sir, of bringing in law changes that are based on one case. I'm not saying that certain cases are right or incorrect or whatever, but it can always be a dangerous thing to do because emotion can sway people. I would also say that I backed Senator Ferguson's excellent suggestion of cameras on HGV. So I would go further. I don't see why we need to worry about having speed cameras or cameras in difficult junctions. Unless you're breaking the law, you should have nothing to fear with that. So I would happily go with that, particularly on dangerous junctions where it could greatly aid road safety. What I would have a little bit of concern at is this, I've forgotten how it was phrased, but let's say that the people likely to cause the greatest harm should be viewed as having a greater duty of care. It's very difficult to see who can create greatest harm. Young toddlers are in danger of causing the greatest harm should they run out into the middle of the road. So because I cannot see anybody in their right mind doing anything other than violently swerving their car to avoid that person. But would that the motorist would, under the circumstances, be viewed as doing that? And I can show an example from my own, against myself, I suppose. But when I was at school, aged about 14, 15, I chased a ball out into the middle of the road. It's not the most sensible thing to do without looking. I suddenly found myself spinning through the air and landed on my elbow. I was badly shaken, quite badly bruised. And my first thought actually at the time was, my goodness, I've been run over here, but I appear to be all right. Now I look round, and whilst I was all right, the cyclist that had been moving down the hill at a brisk pace, I admit, but it was certainly no fault of his own, had gone over the handlebars and skidded along the road on his face, causing himself considerable injury. Now, there were, fortunately, in this case, witnesses who put forward the fact that I had rather carelessly ran in the road, and the gentleman concerned sued my father under his household insurance policy and won damages. But if we had gone to a situation now, it's possible, if you're not careful, and there were no witnesses, that I would have been the injured party, because I would have been perceived as the person who was most at danger from a speeding cyclist coming down a hill. So we do have to be very careful before we go down certain routes, sir. That's all, but I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Deputy, would you give way for a point of, I imagine it to be a point of clarification from Deputy Tadier?
Yes, I would always give way to Deputy Tadier, sir.
Deputy.
Well, thanks. It's kind of the deputy. It relates to the question of cyclists going two abreast. Does the can you clarify that actually, if you're overtaking cyclists legally, that means going onto the other side of the road to give them the required amount of space under the highway code, that it doesn't matter if you're overtaking two bikes or one, and in fact it's easier to overtake two than bikes behind each other.
I'm happy to clarify if you want, sir, but
I'm not sure that is a point of clarification.
I don't think it is.
The deputy was using a visual image. It's an image that's common to everybody, and everyone will have their own experience as to the ease or difficulty of overtaking in those circumstances. I'm not sure that can be a general point of clarification of something which is uncertain. Very well. Deputy Lewis.
Thank you, sir. And can I start by saying I'm absolutely delighted my microphone was actually muted for the last 25 minutes. We'll come to the details later, sir. So as Minister for Infrastructure, I am committed to making our roads safer for all users. And I would like to thank the Constable of St Martin for her proposition. It is clear evidence that we share a common goal and illustrative of the concerns that I think all states members share. I'd also like to thank the government officers and parish officials from the 12 road authorities in all 12 parishes who work to maintain and improve road safety across the island. They are already doing a great deal of work, which is often unseen, to make Jersey's roads safer. Their support will be critical if we are to successfully implement this proposition and achieve its desired outcomes. My amendment, which the Council has kindly accepted, will give further support, and this Assembly's endorsement for the work that is already underway. It will mean that we adopt a safe system approach, the same approach implemented by Highways England to improve road safety. The safe system approach is underpinned by 4 fundamental principles: that people make mistakes that can lead to collisions, that the human body has a known limited physical ability to tolerate collision forces before harm occurs, that while drivers have a responsibility to act with care to the law, we all share a responsibility to prevent collisions resulting in serious injury or death. That responsibility is shared by those who design, build, manage, maintain, and use roads and vehicles. There is also responsibility for authorities to provide post-crash care. The final principle is that all parts of the system must be strengthened in combination to multiply their effect, and road users are still protected if one part fails. The safe system approach will move us away from reactive safety measures and fixing problems towards preemptive safety, incident prevention, and more collaborative partnership working. This holistic review of road safety and an evidence-led approach to safe and sustainable travel will achieve the aims of the Constable's propositions. So I'd also like to thank Senator Ferguson for her amendments. I support her view that improving the vision for heavy goods vehicles could contribute to road safety. Direct vision standards would be considered as part of the review, and if found to significantly improve road safety when compared with other safety countermeasures, would be incorporated in the existing delivery programme of safety initiatives. I believe that the catalyst for this proposition was an accident which left a young boy seriously injured. This proposition could be the catalyst for changing the island's approach to road safety according to international best practice. So I know that with the position that I've been elected to as Minister for Infrastructure, I do get a lot of bluster, and they call it the poison chalice. But I do resent some of the accusations levelled at some of my officers who are extremely hardworking and do an absolutely fantastic job with not a considerable budget. And for people to say that I've implied is too expensive and not worth it is complete nonsense. If the UK go forward with this, which I think they do, they will upgrade their UK highway code, which we have adopted. We've adopted the UK highway code, plus we have our own supplements for little local eccentricities, if like, which are yellow lines across the road and filter and turn roundabouts. But some of the law, as the Solicitor General pointed out in the Highway Code, some of it that is an actual code, a code of conduct. There are bits of it that are enshrined in law. You may not go through a red traffic light. These signs that are around is you must obey speed limits. If it's a no entry, you may not enter. And that is all enshrined in law. Driving for Better Business programme is something that we may be looking at. P30s, there is a fee for P30s. I believe it's about £188, but that's not a money raising programme. That's to make sure all the vehicles are in tip-top condition. And the head of driver and vehicle standards, I know, minimises the amount of P30s on the road. But we do have what's known now as just on time with supermarket deliveries. They no longer have the big cold stores they used to have in the old days. So things literally come off the boat and are delivered to supermarkets. But we try and keep the big vehicles to an absolute minimum because we also have to repair the roads, amongst other things. When we do the review, we will not be excluding anything. Everything will be included. And if people doubt my word, this is recorded on audio. It is also recorded on Hansard, so I can be quoted at any time. And I don't make any particular mention to the particular incident that sparked everything off here, but the vehicle involved in the road traffic collision with the young gentleman driving his bike was a people carrier with windows all around. So I will leave that there. I make no comment on that. That is an enforcement matter. We make the laws in the Assembly. How those laws are implemented, that's for the Centenniers, that's for the law officers to decide. I will finish by saying that I have a grandson the same age as the young gentleman knocked off his bike. My grandson is also a very keen cyclist. So do not assume that we are the department for doing nothing. That's insulting. My team are very dedicated and they will deliver. And I urge members to support the proposition as amended. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start by saying I'll be supporting the Connotab's proposition, but I do so with one slight concern, not directly about the proposition, but about the Assembly and our thinking on the issue of road safety, because it strikes me that we, in general, not just today, but we are very focused on treating the symptoms rather than preventing the likelihood of accidents in the first place. And so, and the reason I say that, sir, is because other than, I believe, Conatable St John and his comments about P30, which I entirely agree with, there's been very little comment today about the most effective way to enhance road safety in the island is to discourage people to drive in the first place. And this ties in with sustainable transport policy. And so it has struck me a few times over the course of the past 3 years how we seem to be willing to accept the dominance of the motor vehicle on our roads above all else, except perhaps for Deputy Ward's, and he was a school teacher, by the way, Deputy Ward's proposition with regard to green lanes, where it was about discouraging road use, car use and motor traffic use. We all seem to be trying to make excuses and just trying to pack more motor vehicles in and changing the rules on the roads to try to make it safer, when actually just removing, through discouragement, motor vehicles in the first place would be better. And I saw this in the issue of the bridge over Clarendon Road between Girls College and Girls College Prep, where utterly ridiculous solution to a really simple problem, which was cars were endangering children crossing the road. But rather than think about removing the cars from that small stretch of road, which was entirely feasible and had been turned down by the parish for some strange reason, the school and the education department were going to the extent of building a bridge over the road, which cost hundreds of £1,000s, actually discriminated against disabled children, and it was all to accommodate the car. And one person who spoke to the planning committee at the time said that no, please don't close the road between those 2 points, because then I won't be able to exit to the south. Well, no, you could exit to the north, turn left a bit later on, and then you'll be heading south within seconds. And so, sir, I would like members to think very strongly that whilst they support this proposition, that they really do need to get behind, one, a sustainable transport policy when we finally see it, that discourages road use, motor vehicle use on our roads, and tries to get people to think of other ways of moving themselves about the island, whether that's on foot or via bicycle. And also think about when speaking to islanders about road use, that we don't suggest, for instance, that there should be more car parking spaces near beaches, etc. It'd be far better if we had fewer car parking spaces near beaches and people were more able to walk there or cycle there. That we don't have cars piling up along the 5 Mile road. Instead, people would, if they were to walk or cycle there would be fewer collisions and the roads would be safer in the first place. So let's just think a little bit about our priorities and what we're doing. There is no point treating the symptoms when you're just going to let the problem get worse and worse and worse through increasing numbers of motor vehicles. Far better to reduce the number of motor vehicles in the first place. Thank you, sir.
Much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak on the proposition, then close the debate and call upon the Connétable St Martin to respond.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to thank everybody who's spoken so far. First of all, I'll just address Senator Ferguson's amendment. My concern with Senator Ferguson's amendment was that it would actually be too constrictive for the officers to provide solutions tailored to the island's needs. However, I would like, and I know it was defeated, and I'm really pleased that Senator Ferguson brought this forward. I have a lot of respect for her. And I'd just like to reassure the Assembly that I'm sure that infrastructure will be looking at the direct vision standard and similar access, and I believe that they already have, but for the far wider scope than provided by the Senator's amendment. And it's for that reason I didn't accept it. But I can assure the Assembly that infrastructure will be looking at that. They have told me so, and I will be keeping an eye on them. Deputy Ward, he said about keeping a close eye on the progress of the review. Yes, I will be chasing them, and I can assure the Assembly that yes, infrastructure comes in for a huge amount of flack, and in this case, it's totally uncalled for, because the officers I've been speaking to are very dynamic and very keen to improve this area greatly. So there's one in particular, we have one expert who's working on this in England and knows everything there is to know about it, and is very, very keen to move this forward and sees it as a catalyst for the work that they would like to undertake. I'd like to say thank you to the Solicitor General for his guidance and opinion. I thank Deputy Higgins and the Constable of St Juan for their comments, and hope that they are listened to and taken on board. Deputy Tadier, sorry, my writing is terrible here. The whole point of this is to improve road safety, but also in a way where we educate all the public, and that's the whole point of the hierarchy, that you just don't leap into your car or on your bike and think in have a different mindset. And the road belongs to everyone. It's not just there for four-wheeled vehicles. To Deputy Young, the focus is on vulnerable road users, and yes, there will be dialogue with the parishes and the legislators, and as Constable of St Lawrence said, yes, we will discuss fixed penalties, and yes, I think the review will be far-reaching, and there's a real appetite in infrastructure to do this. To the Deputy Bruville, I agree with your comments, and I'd just like to say to her, when she said about the constables and the parishes having moving forward with cycling lanes in St Martin, as she knows, we do have a cycling group in the parish, and a member of Cycle for Jersey is a member of our cycling group, and we have made very good progress. Constable of St Lawrence, I thank her for her comments. As Constable of St Brelard, made the point the road safety issue goes to a road safety panel, and are always negative. No, we can't do it. Yes, with this, with my proposition and with the help of the from infrastructure, I think that infrastructure, you know, I can say on this one, they really will be a can-do department. They're very innovative, and I can't really explain the enthusiasm that I have got for this being a catalyst for the improved road safety over here. So yeah, they will be a can-do department. Deputy Ash made a point about, spoke about the point made by Deputy Grooveville about cycle paths, and I'd like to tell him that I've taken on this point about not disrupting cricket with cyclists. I'd like to thank the Minister for Infrastructure for his help and the help and support of his officers, who've been exemplary and actually taught me a lot about road safety, and yeah, their enthusiasm has been quite infectious. To Deputy Morell, I'm glad that he mentioned treating the symptoms rather than the cause, and preventing them. This is the whole point of the proposition, or one of the main points of the proposition, and I'd written down for my closing speech, this is to be proactive rather than reactive, and this is something we really need to do in the island. We really do need to be proactive rather than reactive. Yeah, I agree that roads aren't only there for motor vehicles. I apologise if I've missed anybody out. I would just, yeah, so in my, part of this was to say that this proposition will make us proactive rather than reactive when dealing with road safety. I appreciate all the help that has come from infrastructure. I will be keeping an eye on them. I do think they will be changing their spots or whatever, and they will be known as the can-do. I hope they're known as the can-do department now, when they show what fantastic research and ideas they have for road safety. And I'd just like to say that, as I said at the close of my speech, the aim of the proposition is to provide constructive, proactive and lasting improvements to road safety in Jersey. And with the support of the Assembly, and I seems to have overwhelming support, which I'm really, really grateful for, I think we can begin to make true, genuine and lasting improvements that will keep islanders safe on the road, regardless of their method of transportation. And so for the sake of everybody in the island, everybody uses the roads in whatever aspect, please vote for this proposition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Connie-Tarbh. Ask the referee to put a voting link into the chat. There, and I open the voting and ask members to vote in the normal way. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the referee to close the voting. Proposition has been adopted, 46 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 1 vote pour in the chat. Very well. The last item of public business is the Controller and Auditor General Board of Governance appointment of chair and members, P7, lodged by the Chief Minister, and I ask the referee to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion, in accordance with Article 3 of the Controller and Auditor General Board of Governance Jersey Order 2015, to appoint Mrs. Grace Nesbitt as Chair and Robert Tinlin and Professor Russell Griggs as members of the Board of Governance of the Office of the Controller and Auditor General for a period of 4 years with effect of the 14th of March 2021.
Chief Minister.
Yes, sir. The Deputy St Peter has volunteered to act as rapporteur on this item, sir, particularly as he's involved in the interview process, sir. Thank you.
Very much, Deputy St Peter.
I'm hoping he isn't going to have his technical difficulties again, sir.
Well, at the moment, you're either miming Deputy St Peter or you're muted. Do you want to try again? Let's try again. No, I'm afraid there still appears to be silence.
Don't worry, sir. I'll take it. Don't worry.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Yes,
I will tell Deputy Peter to unplug his earphones again, sir.
And out of kindness to him, Chief Minister, you might want to tell him to stop talking now.
Well, actually, we're in different rooms as well, sir, but he might as well keep himself entertained for a period of time. So this is a hopefully a very straightforward proposition, sir. As the Deputy Gruffy has read out, it's to appoint Mr. Grace Nesbitt as Chair and Robert Tinlin and Professor Russell Griggs as members of the Board of Governance for the Office of the Controller and Auditor General. It's for 4 years with effect from the 14th of March this year. A robust appointment exercise was carried out, and obviously this proposition is lodged as is stated, with obviously my support, sir, but also the Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, as is the process, the procedure on these type of processes. And I think other than that, sir, to keep it short, I make the proposition, sir. Thank you.
Very much. Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Any member wish to speak on the proposition? No member wishes to speak on the proposition. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I just would like to say thank you to the Chief Minister and his Deputy Hulin for cooperation and for working together. It was a really good process that we've gone through, and I'm looking forward to work with this board. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Higgins. Deputy Higgins.
Sorry, I don't wish to speak, sir, after all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon the Chief Minister to respond.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I thank the words of Deputy Gardner, sir. Can I also, so I just want to thank her as well, because I understand the process has worked very well, as it has been a robust process undergone. What I do just want to say, sir, is just take the opportunity, because I've been very remiss in the past, or not had the opportunity as well, sir, to pay tribute to the predecessor chairman of PAC, i.e. Senator Ferguson, who's also been through this process as well. But I just want to state my absolute best wishes to her and pay tribute to her long service in this assembly. And I'm sure she will continue to remind me and us in the error of our ways from time to time, as is her wont. And obviously, generally, I always look forward to, and it's usually very welcome. But seriously, sir, to thank her very much for her time as a very long established member of the Assembly. Long may it continue, but particularly to pay tribute as the former chairman of PAC and the service of this Assembly. In saying that, sir, I maintain the proposition, and I think just call for the appel, sir. Thank you.
Very much. I'll ask the Greffier to place a voting link into the chat. The voting link is there. I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Ask the Secretary to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted, 42 votes pour, no votes contre in the link, and 1 further vote pour noted in the chat.
Thank you, sir.
There is that concludes public business. We now invite the chair of PPC to propose the arrangement for future business. I have a list, however, of people who are indicating a desire to say something about future business. So presumably, chair of PPC, you would like to hear what those individuals have to say before you propose public business?
Yes, please, sir. I was just going to say actually that there have been no changes to the arrangement of public business from what is listed on the consolidated order, but I do believe that the Minister for Treasury and Resources may want to speak regarding reducing the lodging time for P9, and I've also heard from the Deputy of St Peter who wishes to propose an in-committee debate on the forthcoming population policy for the next sitting. So I'd like to hand over to them, please, sir. Thank you.
That's very well. Shall we take first the Minister of Treasury and Resources?
Thank you, sir. The draft income tax payment of 2019 liability regulations, which is P9, were lodged on the 10th of February, 1 day later than expected. Those draft regulations set out the terms under which islanders who paid taxes under the former prior year basis arrangement can repay their 2019 tax bills, which this Assembly froze on the 4th of November 2020. The law we passed on the 4th of November 2020 obliges us to make the regulations by the 31st of March of this year, 2021. In the event that our sitting commencing on Tuesday, the 23rd of March, does not continue into the Wednesday, I seek States members' approval to reduce the lodging period by just 1 day in accordance with Standing Order 26, subsection 7, so that the debate can take place on that Tuesday, the 23rd of March. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, Minister, I'm slightly distracted. Were you proposing that to be taken now and to be dealt with now?
Yes, please, sir, so that I can just get States members' approval that if the sitting on the 23rd of March is just for the 1 day, that we can take the debate on P9 on that day. So reducing the lodging period by just 1 day.
Is that proposal seconded?
Yes, sir.
Seconded. Does any member wish to speak on that proposition? If no one wishes to speak on that proposition, I propose to take that on a standing vote, unless someone indicates in the chat that they would wish it not to be taken on a standing vote.
So can we have a vote, please?
Yes, in which case we'll put in a vote into the link shortly, which will be a vote on enabling the Minister for Treasury and Resources to take the matter at the next sitting, even if it is 1 day out of time. A vote pour will permit that to happen. It'll just take a moment for the greffier to set up the vote. The link is now, my screen is not working properly. The link is now posted and I open the voting. Come in. Very well. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the close the vote. That proposition was adopted, 41 votes pour, 1 vote contra in the link, and a further vote pour in the chat.
Sir, can we have the contra vote, please?
Thank you.
Deputy Tadier voted contra.
Very well. Deputy Masson, you had a matter to raise?
Yes, sir. I believe I've got my proposition listed as the first item for the next sitting. I've had some very productive conversations with officers of the States Employment Board and the Vice Chair of the States Employment Board, and I just want to give notice to members that most likely is to be withdrawn. I'm just waiting for Seb to dot a few I's and cross a few T's, but so members don't spend too long preparing for that debate. Thank you, sir.
Very much indeed. The Deputy of St Peter, you wish to raise a matter relating to an in-committee debate?
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I've moved computers. I'm having a horror story today, but let's continue. Yes, during the 137 debate this morning, I spoke about my intention to hold an in-committee debate on the general population issues in the next state sitting. I think it's important that members know I intend to utilise this important output from the in-committee debate to draw up initial themes for further development for ministers, scrutiny panel and interested members. And it's clearly an important issue, as discussed this morning. I'll therefore propose an in-committee debate on general population issues at the next State Assembly session. Thank you, sir.
One moment, just let me order. I don't remember. Excuse me a moment.
Of course.
So you are proposing under 89.2 that the Assembly sit in committee at the next meeting to discuss general policy in connection with population. Is that right?
Yes, please, sir.
Well, is that proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on that proposition? Deputy Young.
Thank you, sir. I apologise for coming in now, but I wasn't aware of this. The question in my mind, and I invite the Assistant Chief Minister to respond to it, is that we're right at the work that I'm currently working on with the officers. We're right on the 11th hour of putting together the final draft for the island plan, and the current is likely to go to Council of Ministers towards the end of March, and for publication now early in April. My worry is because that will give will allow members to have the full knowledge of where we are housing and land use wise in relation to current population. So I just wonder whether it will be wise to have that debate before members do have that information. I just put the question, sir. I'm not taking a firm position on it. I invite the Assistant Chief Minister to respond to that, sir.
Very much, Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. In a similar, but not exactly the same vein, I just wanted to raise with the Assistant Chief Minister that I have no problem with an in-committee debate on population policy, but I believe that to hold a successful debate, much in the way that the Environment Minister did with the Island Plan debate, is that members will need to be provided with a great deal of material in terms of potential questions to be answered, information, data, and so on and so forth. And so it was just if he could provide reassurance that he will be able to provide that sort of information well in advance of the debate, not the day before the debate, but at least a week before the debate. And if not, then I'd suggest it's worth holding it at the later assembly, because it'd be dangerous to hold an in-committee debate without material for us to take as our lead for the debate, if you understand what I mean. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on this question, which is whether there should be an in-committee debate next sitting? Very well, I call, if no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate on that and call on the Deputy St Peter to respond.
I thank the Environment Minister because he's obviously undertaking a huge amount of work, and the island plan is very, very important for us, quite clearly, and he's at the pressure point of that, and that is to be respected. Deputy Morell, an enormous amount of the information that is required for a debate is already in our domain. As the result of the considerable studies that have been done for the migration controls policy debates today. However, I am at the will of the Assembly. If they would like me to give extensive documentation and compile all that documentation for them prior to the debate, and 3 weeks is not long enough, then I'm more interested in a successful debate than a quick debate. However, we are under a considerable time constraint because we have got to get this population policy out at the will of the Assembly by the end of the year. So I really am in a little bit of a conundrum. I want to listen, but I also want to keep my foot on the pedal as we go through this. So you can tell, sir, and I'm sure members can tell that I am somewhat confused. So may I recommend, sir, that we go to the vote, and if people say no to this, then I will bring it back and defer it for the subsequent meeting of the Assembly, not the one on the 23rd of March.
Very well. It would still require the consent.
I'd very much like to do it in 3 weeks' time. That would be my preference, but I would like to listen as well.
Very well. Ask Greffier to put a vote into the link. Vote is on whether or not there should be an in-committee debate on population at the next sitting of the Assembly. The link has been posted. I open the voting and ask members to vote.
Sir.
Yes.
Deputy St Peter is trying to log in so he can vote separately, having been using my machine. So can we grant him a 30 seconds more to be able to get into the form, sir, if possible?
Yes. Well,
apparently he's done, sir. Thank you. Apologies.
Good. Thank you very much. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the Greffier to close the voting. The proposition is adopted, 30 votes pour, 14 votes contre in the link, and 1 further vote pour in the chat. Yes, Deputy Morell, you have a matter to raise on future business?
Yes, sir, and it's very much about attempting to return to the States Assembly building, sir, the States Chamber. I would just ask PPC to consider, in light of the fact that parish halls have a derogation to hold parish assemblies, with limits of numbers of people limited only by having 2 metre gaps between them and ventilation. I don't understand why a parish assembly should be able to take place if the States Assembly, but the States Assembly not take place. I appreciate health guidelines may be revisited later this week, and that should enable things. But I would ask, regardless, that PPC do consider very carefully a hybrid return to the States Assembly so that some of us can start seeing each other in person again, I do believe we've seen technical problems today which highlight the difficulties of having solely remote sittings. And also, I think it's really important for relationships between states members. There are some states members who have been unable to attend or see other states members for a very long time, and I think that builds division and doesn't help us with our business, sir. So I ask PBC and the chair of PBC to very carefully consider helping us get back to the Assembly. Thank you.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member have any matter of future arrangements for business to raise?
So I believe Deputy Doublé wanted to comment on International Women's Day before we adjourn. I don't know if that's.
Oh, well,
now.
no, we must. The first thing on the order paper is to, because it's now currently before us, Deputy Alves, is to deal with future business. Whatever but the sitting still goes until I say it's adjourned. So let's just deal with future business.
Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to say anything about future business? No, Deputy Alves, then do you propose the future business in the light of the things that have been said and agreed by the Assembly?
Yes, thank you, sir. I just wanted to pick up on a comment that Deputy Morell said, that we will definitely be revisiting the current restrictions once they are changed. Again, we will be looking at going back into a hybrid system. And with that, sir, I propose the arrangement of public business as shown on the consolidated order paper and with the changes that have been identified. Thank you, sir.
Much. Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak upon that? No member wishes to speak. I will take the matter as a standing vote that that's adopted. No, in which case the future business will be as proposed by the chair of PPC. It's somewhat unusual, but Deputy Doublé, you wish to make an observation on an event, I believe, so I'll afford you a brief opportunity to do so. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. It's very brief. I literally have 4 sentences that I just wanted to bring members' attention to the fact that on Monday it is International Women's Day, and the theme this year is Choose to Challenge. The idea behind this is that a challenged world is an alert world. Individually, we're all responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day, every day. And this theme is a call to action for all of us as states members, men and women, to continue this work, to come together, to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. We can all choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements in our communities, and collectively we can all help create an inclusive Ireland for the good of all. And as chair of the Diversity Forum, I'll be sending an invitation around to members for a virtual photo opportunity to mark International Women's Day, and I hope that members will support this.
Right, Deputy, I'm not sure that was 4 sentences, but succinctly put, and thank you. Very well, that concludes all business. The Assembly stands adjourned until the 23rd of March.